Welcome to your awakening. Please take all as your reality is adjusted.
Hello, hello, hello. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Yes, hello, welcome. Virtual Shamanizing with me, the heavy cookie monster. Yes, hopefully you can hear me. Somebody said, blue ornament. Yes. So I'm guessing in the chat room you can hear me. Hello to all you in the chat room, you ravening horde of resistors. Yes, that's part of the subject I'll come back to anyway, before I digress too far. Yeah, that was a pluck from back in the 90s. Could you say pop song? It is a pop song, isn't it? Yeah, sorry, subjecting you to a pop song. But I think, the lyrics in that seem quite appropriate at the moment. Fa diddly qua qua, has anything more important ever been put to music? Fa diddly qua qua. And thinking on that point of stand and deliver highway robbery, could you even say that the people who've been robbed had any choice in it? Did they have any choice? When the old classic highway robber would pull you up and say stand and deliver, you do sort of have a choice. You can try and fight back and not get robbed, but with what's going on at the moment, people don't really have any choice. They're being robbed anyway. Yes, before I go running off, get ahead of myself. Hello, welcome. It is the 4th of the 4th, 2013. Make what you want out of those numbers. They are a bunch of sequential numbers on the Gregorian calendar. What time is it now? It's now. Yes, indeed. But anyway, yes, marking the date just for the records. For when the people in the future look back at us and go, what the hell were they doing? Crazy people destroying the planet and each other and everything else they can get their hands on. Oh dear. Well, yes, hello. I'm back after 2 weeks break. Sorry about last week. Hopefully I gave people enough notice. I didn't realise I wouldn't be available on the Thursday night until a few days beforehand, but there you go. And yes, I was off enjoying the English countryside and seaside for the equinox period. No, I didn't go abroad, couldn't afford that. Well, I very, very luckily didn't have to pay anything towards the holiday. As I think I mentioned in the last show, it was to celebrate someone's birthday in the family, and other members of the family had paid for the whole getaway so that we could all go away as a family group, all that immediate tribal group, and celebrate together. And like I mentioned before, in the last show I did just 2 weeks ago, yes, it seemed quite synchronistic timing to me, the fact that it was the equinox, all that good stuff. Yes, hopefully you had a good equinox, Easter, Ishtar, rebirth of the sun, the sun, S-O-N, sun, S-U-N, Sol. Yes, you go running off in that direction as well if you want. Let's not get ahead of ourselves too quick. But yes, as I think was somewhat of a meme recently, it's not like it's anything new, but just seemed to resurge a bit. I saw various, but I think I talked about it before, I saw various people talking about that reconnecting with your tribal groupings, etc. Did seem to be a talking point for the last few weeks. Yeah, it all seems highly synchronistic and appropriate. And as I say, because my personal financial situation is, I'm right at, near enough, not quite at the very bottom of the pyramid, but near enough. So for me to go away on holiday, it's not something I normally do, because I ain't got the money to do it. £53 a week. You can live on £53 a week, can you, mate? Really? Yeah, I'll come back to that. So yes, it just sort of also came to my attention. One of my friends chatting with him the other day, and when I mentioned I'd been on holiday, it was just the curious with the way he questioned me. Like, oh, really? Have you? Where you been then? Because he's working at the moment, so with all the demonising that goes on in the public eye, in the press, I did put a little picture that somebody linked earlier. Thank you for that link, 'cause that's quite a good little picture. Some reverse propaganda, a reworking of the front page of the Daily Fail. Yes, anyway, it's in the chat room for those that could see it. They'll see what I mean. Simply put, the product of the wealthy elite. Vile product of the wealthy elite. Yes, anyway, you might see that picture going viral, I think, fairly quickly. But yes, anyway, I didn't have to pay anything towards that holiday, so all those people out there that have the mindset of thinking I'm a dirty, horrible scrounger, stealing all their hard-earned money out of their pocket so I can go gallivanting to the coast, no, thank you very much. I could not afford to do things like that because I am surviving on the current benefit system in the UK. So there you go. Yes, I'm sure that the naysayers and whatever will have lots of fun with that, but carry on. Let them do as they will. They're just deluding themselves. Anyway. So yes, I'm back anyway. I will rant at you for, me ranting will probably be an hour and a half worth of me rambling in your ear hole, but I have got quite a long list of stuff, links to give you, etc. Because, I've had 2 weeks worth of not having the opportunity to say all this shit, so therefore you're going to get a mental bukkake, truth bukkake all over you. I apologise for that. In your ear hole, you'll have to get the cotton buds out and give them a good cleaning. But yes, let's not get too silly. Joy and laughter is part of your toolkit, part of your ammunition, and please don't misconstrue that into implying any kind of violence or aggressive action. No, it's ammunition to use as defence and also as a tool to help others. Joy and laughter and being able to still appreciate those kind of things in life. Don't let the machine grind you down. Don't let the bastards grind you down. There is a lot of shit going on. There is a lot of nastiness in the world. Yes, there is. We can't deny it. We have to realise it and face it and work on solutions to deal with it, etc. But at the same time, if you get stuck in that doom and gloom fear mentality, you're just helping the machine. You're doing exactly what it wants you to do. That's something else that I'll sort of come back to. Yeah, I've got a few things that I want to dance around and shake a stick at. We will go for a wander through this landscape and see what we shall see. Hopefully the microphone quality is a bit better for you, and hopefully I don't cough at you too much. Apologies for that, but yes, I'm usually coughing. So where shall we begin? I mentioned what track it was at the beginning. I think you'll get the point. Stand to deliver. Let's sort of do a quick sort of go over some of the news, just in general. If you listen to me rant ramble before, I don't like to dwell too much on the general news because it's there, it's readily available for anyone that wants to look at it. You can find it easy enough. You're subjected to it 24/7, so just constantly repeating it, I find a bit pointless, really. But just to mention some stuff, Israel taking the advantage of the current distractions, the mass divergence of energies of people trying to deal with so much other stuff that they're not really keeping much of an eye on what Israel is doing, but yeah, Israel going into Palestinian territory again, attacking, and yes, ranted lots before about that situation, but it's just to make sure people don't forget that, you know, what is still going on over there. Of course, there's lots of situations like the situation in Burma, etc., that is conveniently left out of the general news. But they are all those agendas, those genocides, those ghetto-cides, etc., are all still going on, even with all the other destructional crap that's in the general news. Oh dear, whichever footballer happens to be gay or not, I really don't care if they're gay. They're kissing each other constantly on the pitch, so, you know, what do you expect? And link I want to give you just simply because I want to pay this forward because it's a good article anyway, and it's sort of loosely linked to that situation. Well, not loosely, quite intertwined linked, but it's not as if it's anything new info or whatever, nothing majorly, you know, sudden knowledge or recent knowledge, etc. It's just sort of codifies that kind of perspective, and, you know, take it for what you will. It's a good resource for the background history of that perspective. I'm not going to tell you it's right or wrong, that's up to you. You'll find it on whatreallyhappened.com. It's the article written by Rivera, I think Mike Rivera. All wars are bankers' wars. It's quite a long article, so, you know, bookmark it, read it at your leisure. Like I say, it's a good resource to get a grips with some of the historical context to a lot of what is going on in the contemporary world. You know, if you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it. They're using the same old patterns that they've used again and again, the same old agendas, the same old systems and events. But yeah, that's a sort of slight aside, but it had come up again on some other people's links that I follow, and I thought, yeah, okay, fair enough. It is one of those articles that still needs to keep being pushed forward, so that more people become aware of it and can reference it and utilise it and use it as a jump point, a stepping stone, etc., etc. So anyway, yes. Sorry, coughing in your ear roll. Something else in the news past few days, which I've resisted the urge to post comments to the video clips of it, because I just thought there's no need. if this isn't, you know, just more obviousness in people's faces, then I find it a bit difficult to find ways to help them. Yes, anyway, a blaze engulfs skyscraper in Chechnya. I don't have any particular links for this. News is readily available for it. I think it was even breaching onto mainstream, general mainstream, like MSN, etc. Now, I originally saw it on RT, and yes, you know, it's RT. They've got their own agenda and they're pushing their own propaganda. Blah. Yeah, of course they are. Whatever. It's all the same stuff. It's the same as what you should be doing with me now. Just because you're listening to me, that doesn't mean you turn off your own critical thought. You don't take everything I say as being unassailable. You think about this stuff for yourself, and you look for evidence for yourself, and you look for reason for yourself. So in the same way, you do that with other information sources such as RT. Yes, they have an agenda. Yes, they use propaganda. Get fed up of saying this to people, and you still see the same old comments of, you shouldn't watch that particular channel, you shouldn't listen to that particular thing because it's propaganda for this, that or the other. Yes. I can't say I'm fed up with it now, not if I'm honest, because I'm still doing it, I'm still looking at this stuff, so therefore I ain't fed up with it. I'm still reading those comments, and I do occasionally, very occasionally now though, because I don't feel a need to prod people as much in that manner. I do occasionally post comments to sort of try and remind people of some of those just simple, obvious truths. Think for yourself, for God's sake. For his sake, yeah, exactly. If you're a believer in that sense, a theist or whatever. Excuse me tripping over myself as I get distracted by talking about those kind of subjects. Yes, so anyway, building a blaze. If you've seen the recent videos of it, it was most definitely a towering inferno. And guess what? It didn't fall down. It didn't collapse into its own footprint at almost free fall speed for those pedantic, ridiculously pedantic deniers who constantly cry, oh, it was a fraction of a second less than free fall speed. Yeah, this building did not fall down, has not fallen down, did not fall into its own footprint. Do people want it just bashed over their head continuously? Do we need to get the Lego towers out? I think a Lego tower would probably melt before it collapsed, you know, but anyway, there you go. So what else in the news? Is there an oil spill in Arkansas, or Arkansas, depends how you want to say it. Do have a link for this one, simply because I found it interesting that this news took a couple of days or so, I think, roughly guesstimating the time, before it breached into the mainstream, before the mainstream basically could no longer avoid it, and they had to put up articles about it, make multitasking work quicker. Hopefully that link worked for you, it hasn't broken in the middle, I hope. Anyway, yeah, from Reuters, or on Reuters.com, waiting for it to load. Yes, it's working good. Update, it's currently on update 3. Update 3, Exxon pipeline leaks thousands of barrels of Canadian oil in Arkansas. Yeah, I thought this was worth keeping an eye on, and certainly worth mentioning, because of course you've got the whole tar sands pipeline debacle, political football going on at the moment. It has been going on for quite a while. If you don't know about the tar sands up in Alberta in Canada, you know, go and check it out. It's another one of those subjects that has to keep being brought back into public attention, because people soon forget about these things, and you end up, as others have mentioned, as I think he was a guest on Adonis's show ages ago, last year or the year before, a guy called John Bollenbaugh, who you'll find him on YouTube. He covers the oil spill. I cannot remember the name of the company now. Sorry, I didn't think to look that up beforehand, because it's only just spurred in my memory. But yeah, he's still covering the after effects of the another oil spill, where the families that have been affected are still trying to get some kind of justice, some kind of recompense, or just even having the environment correctly. Or more, I should really say, you know, basically doing a better job of sorting that situation out, because they've literally just shoveled dirt on top of the oil and left it there to soak into the ground. And here we go with this one again. As I say, this particular spill again involves tar sands oil. So first thing that happened was all the word magic manipulators came out the woodwork, the lawyers, in other words, you know, not using their legalese. the word magicians, the word sorcerers came out of the darkness and started talking about how it wasn't oil, because it was tar sands oil. You know, it was bitumen, it wasn't oil. But eventually there was enough coverage of this event that mainstream actually had to address it and mention it and talk about it, and yes, it is an oil spill. So there's that going on at the moment, and as I say, it ties in conveniently to all this political backwards and forwards about the XL pipeline. This is going to go on and on and on. It's going to get worse and worse. Similar situations in Nigeria and other parts of the world. I was going to say Africa, but it's not really targeted at one particular country. These big super mega corporations, the big oil corporations, go in, and as I've ranted about lots before, what is the purpose of a corporation? It's to make money as efficiently as possible with as little cost as possible. In other words, maximise profits, reduce costs. So do you think they really care about being fined a few million for a spill? They'll just add it as another cost onto the costing sheet. As far as they're concerned, they don't care. It's the same, to simplify it a little bit, it's the same kind of principle as rich people parking on double yellow lines in a congested area. They don't care, they don't give a crap, because they can afford to pay the parking fine. So as far as they're concerned, it's basically just an expensive car park. They'll park wherever they like, because they're different to everybody else. They're different to you and me. They live in their own little world. So yes, that pipeline. What else was I going to mention? Well, I suppose I've got to mention North Korea, because it is certainly in the mainstream. It's the main news story going around the cycle at the moment, isn't it? So what can I say about that hasn't already been said by lots of other people? Is it just bluster? It does follow a regular pattern that North Korea has been using for a long time, where they'll have an outburst and they'll make lots of threats and they'll throw their dummy out the pram basically and have a little tantrum, and then they'll come back to the negotiating table and they'll feel like they've saved face, and they've maybe got a few bargaining chips extra because they've made all this furore about walking away from the negotiating table in the first place. Yes, that's part of it, but as lots of other people have been saying, a new leader, a young leader, somebody who might potentially, because I don't want to try and read his mind in that sense, may potentially have some kind of desire to prove himself, or may even just be a bit crazy. Crazy people do crazy things, and with the amount of bullying and saber rattling and bluster and threats that are coming from the Western allies, the question is just how long, if somebody's waving a stick in your face, just how long do you wait before deciding if they're going to hit you or not with the stick? And it's really oversimplifying it a lot, making it a bit silly, but I think you get the point. Are they being backed into a corner to such a point that this overt threatening certainly seems to be, to me anyway, it seems to be very deliberate and very agendized to provoke them. I don't like to attempt to predict things, certainly not things like this, but it's absolutely perfectly fertile ground for a false flag, and that's not necessarily on the Korean Peninsula. It could be somewhere else, and it's just connected to either them or some other paramilitary or terrorist organisation in another country, especially one of the Western countries like here in the UK or the USA or somewhere in Europe, and that could spark the whole domino process of them being blamed and attacked, and the Western nations will begin by trying to do it in a proxy fashion, such as they've been doing with Syria, and as they have did before with the other nations, Libya, etc. So it is, despite what I would normally be inclined to say when something like this happens with North Korea in question, it's the usual round of bluster and walking away and coming back again, but this obviously is a different situation, and it is seemingly continuing on the escalation on both sides. Is it as bad as the Cuban Missile Crisis? No, I don't think so, because that was major powers moving against each other deliberately. But it could also be argued that North Korea is just the proxy bully boy for China, and yes, China could be provoking all this as well and pushing funds in through North Korea to use it as a proxy front, etc., etc. Oh, this is the interwoven craziness of that global chessboard. But yes, in the news at the moment, worth keeping an eye on, certainly, because as I say, it certainly seems to be a very unstable situation, because there's too many possible variables with what's going on, and both sides seem to be determined with what they're doing. They seem to be determined to turn this into a conflict. Could talk about the new American century and all that kind of stuff, and how this all could roll into my own argument of the blitzkrieg agenda. This is another aspect, another tentacle of that blitzkrieg agenda of reaching out and attempting to grab hold of those countries or areas, nations, whatever, groups that have been a thorn in the side, supposedly, of the Western allies. Whereas, if you look a bit deeper, you usually find out eventually, well, I will put my usual caveat on it. From my perspective, I came to the conclusion that the vast majority of these other groups are deliberately either put there in the first place, i.e. totally created, or they are pushed into and propagandized into, agendized into, manipulated into being that enemy. Neo-colonialism, classic colonial system. You go in and you find out who are likely to be the troublemakers against your new empire, and you make sure that you gradually herd them towards being those very rebels that you want them to be, so that then you can deal with them. Anyway, yes. Before I ramble off too far again, I wanted to mention the North Korea. There's something else to keep in mind. I've been waiting actually for a few others to cover this, because it's good subject topic matter for a few other people out there, I think, who've done a lot more work in this sense in terms of pre-programming, Hollywood programming, etc. It doesn't take a lot of effort to do a quick review of recent history, I'm talking past few years, and accounting for just how much propaganda there has been, just how many storylines have revolved around North Korea, and North Korea being the enemy, North Korea being the crazy man, etc., etc. There's been so much of it over the last few years. And recently, this main reason why I wanted to mention this, there is a new film out at the moment, out of the Hollywood studios. So yes, be very prepared for propaganda with this. I think it's called Olympus Has Fallen, something like that. The title is. I note it's quite interesting as well that they refer to the White House as Olympus. Yes, home of the gods. Really? Do you know what the statue is on top of the White House? Do you? And on top of the Senate building, not the White House. But all these connotations, again, look into the hidden history of the USA, of the founding of the United States, etc. The stonecutters were united in their plan. Yes, anyway, digressing again. This recent film is just absolutely saturated in propaganda. It again pastes North Korea as being the bad guy, even though they subtly do it by proxy, because the actual bad guys in the story are members of a terrorist group, a paramilitary group. So it's not North Korea directly, it's these North Korean supporters, the bad guys. So they, the script writers carefully sidestep that legal requirement and that lawyer bill to deal with that. But it's basically a group of bad guys, super evil geniuses, figure out a way to take over the White House. They storm it and invade it and take it over and then hold the president hostage. And the hero of the story, the special agent hero, is the only person that can rescue the president. As I say, I'm waiting on some other people such as Tom Secker, who does really good stuff on like this kind of Hollywood script writing, etc., to have a go, to have a chew over this film, because it is quite interesting in that sense. But there is so much propaganda interlaced into it, and one of the main things I'll note, just to give you some idea of it, is, as I say, the superhero in the storyline is a special agent, and throughout the film you're constantly presented with these ideas that the special agents, the CIA guys and the FBI guys and the NSA guys, all those men in black with the sunglasses on, with the squiggly cable that goes into their ear hole, and why they put the microphone in the cuff. I could never understand that, because that means every time you go to speak, somebody sees you putting your arm up to your face, so it's pretty fucking obvious that you're speaking into a microphone, unless you're having a conversation with your wrist, But anyway, yes, you're constantly presented with this idea that all these men in black guys are the good guys. You should care about them. They're there to protect your country. They're there to protect you, because terrorists could be under your bed. They could leap out at you at any moment, just like they do in the film, literally. They're leaping out of cars at people and stuff like that. It gets very silly. It's quite ingenious, some of the things, but it is also quite silly. And during the fight and the storming of the White House, you see all these men in black literally falling like dominoes as they're being mowed down by machine gun fire. So many little bits of what could be added into propaganda agenda. Yes, if you want just an action type film in the usual kind of Hollywood fashion, it's that kind of action hero film. But if you look at it with your eyes open, you'll see just so much more in that. And as well, don't forget the fact that the remake of the Red Dawn film came out not that long ago, where again North Korea are the bad guys, and it's another one of those support the troops, support your military propaganda type films. As I say, lots of interesting snippets in the propaganda at the moment. Not only Hollywood, but also various bits and bobs here and there. As the news cycle currently is at the moment, obsessed with talking about how North Korea are threatening us all with nuclear weapons, etc., etc. A lot of demonising propaganda has been building up. And lo and behold, we're now at this point. Is it a coincidence that there's been all this recent propaganda build up to them being an enemy, and we're here in this situation where a conflict seems to be beginning to happen? Coincidence? No. I can't remember who it was who said it. I think it might have been, was it Roosevelt? A quote said, "If anything happens in politics, it is planned to happen. Nothing happens by accident in politics," something like that. Anyway, yes. That's just another one of those stories in the news at the moment. What else can I mention about news? Well, I've got lots of other links to get to, but they're more intertwined into the main stuff I want to talk about. So I know what I will do. I will play some tunes. Somebody mentioned nipping to the loo. I'll play a tune break worth going and put the kettle on if you want. I'll call this the kettling break, and I will be subjecting you to some sonic attack, so you could consider it sonic kettling. There you go. Are we just creating total gibberish fantasies now to make it sound like it was actually some kind of constructed thing or some kind of amazing synchronicity? No. About what's that, about 8-9 minutes worth of music stuff, and it might be a bit loud, so I'll turn it down a tiny bit. But yes, I will be back shortly. This is sort of a bit of a tribute. It was actually the idea to play this was spurred in my head by Max Kaiser the other day when he was talking about the parasite tapeworm. Let's put it that way. As you slither up to me in your poo-poo majesty. Yeah, I think if you can understand the lyrics, you might get the point. Anyway, yes, enjoy. I will be back in a few minutes. We are flipping the pyramid. I can't do a Snortle Hans voice, sorry. Yes, hello, welcome back. Hopefully you've been and got drinks and been to the loo and everything now, so I can rant at you some more. Yeah, a little 10-minute break of audio-ness. Yes, a bit higher on the frequencies, a bit higher on the volume. I did give you warning. I did say I'd turn it down a little bit. I thought that might have made you think, it would be a bit of volume, but there you go. System of a Down, Needles, pull the tapeworm out of your ass. Metallica, Sad But True. Classic, I think, lyrics as well. Maybe not directly linked to anything contemporary, but certainly the situation as a whole has aspects of that within it. Yes, anyway, up to you. Make of it what you will. It's there as audio-ness. Trying to put some of that music back into existence. Using it to transmute. Yes, anyway, go back to my notes. Okay, let's begin. Giving you some... I've got, like I said, loads of links I want to throw at you this week. This might at first seem totally unconnected, but give it time, like I usually do. These things are intertwined in some manner. Everything's connected, so everything is intertwined, but I just like to point out these trails as we go. I lifted this originally from the New World Next Week report from James Corbett and Media Monarchy. So I saw it mentioned. The link actually comes from a website called extremetech.com. To go there if you want to find it. The title of the article is Stanford Creates Biological Transistors, the Final Step Towards Computers Inside Living Cells. Oh, it's science fiction now, folks. You're living in a brave new world. A brave new world, oh bugger. Where's my Soma? Yes, quick, light me Soma. It's not an extremely long or in-depth article, but it does link to the original studies, etc., and the research paper. So if you are highly interested, you can jump from there to a more detail, more info if you want to. And yes, as I've heard other people mention, this is not talking about electronic circuitry placed within a cell or within a biological entity. This is talking about making the equivalent of a logic gate, which is the core of what makes computers what they are, and the chips what they are, etc., to create a logic gate function using biological material. So in other words, using the bits and bobs that are within your own biology to create a logic gate. If you can then link enough of the right ones together, that's what creates a computer, basically, in a very simplified manner. There's a few other bits and pieces required, storage device and stuff like that, and interface, etc. But that's the core of what a computer is, and what makes a computer do what it does. Logic gates. So if they can now start creating biological logic gates, there's just a few bits in this article which I would point out as sort of like key phrases. Let's see, the transcriptor. That to me basically describes it as changing one thing into another, which is what it potentially does. It takes in one or two signals and it outputs a different signal or activates a different signal. But just further down, last sentence in that first paragraph, just the end bit, is that commanding a cell to stop producing insulin or to self-destruct if cancer is detected. Let's say that again. Commanding a cell to stop producing insulin or to self-destruct if cancer is detected. Now I know for the deniers and naysayers, they'll probably go, oh, you're getting into paranoid, crazy conspiracy stuff now because you're focusing on somebody controlling it. Oh. This is not paranoia, this is just basic, obvious, evidential facts. They're talking about creating a logic gate. Yes, you create a logic gate. Logic gates require a command function, a program. You know, by the way they're designed, affects what the gate can actually do. That's why you get the different ones like and, nand, or, zor, nor, etc., like it says in the article. So that means somebody is structuring these things. So somebody has control over them. Somebody has command over them during their creation to start with. And then as these things as this technology progresses and these things get built into biological computers, then of course somebody's got to program those computers. So it's another step along the machine, another step along that transhumanist agenda. Could it be? Okay, I'll give you another link. This one's on the Activist Post. I'm not sure if they originated the article or they were just aggregating it or what, but that's where I found it. This is a bit more in-depth. I think it's quite a long article, isn't it? Yeah, just waiting for it to load. Yeah, it is quite a long one if you want to read it. As I usually say, it's there for you to read at your leisure if you want to. Activistpost.com, Neuroscience, Obama's Brain Project and Military Mind Control. I'm not going to go running off down this trail, shouting and flailing my arms like a jumper in a washing machine. Which normally I would do, but it's part of the flow. Let's continue on this trail without getting stuck too much in one particular area. As the title suggests, is the article does what the title suggests, talking about that kind of DARPA research that is being funded. Obviously not just DARPA, but there's lots of those NGO funds being funneled into this research area, and this is no longer science fiction. This is very, very rapidly accelerating. Project 2045, you think we're all crazy conspiracy theorists, do you? Do you really? You think we all got our tinfoil hats on, and here they are openly putting information out there that yes, they are working on this kind of technology. And do please remember, whatever they admit to in the public sphere means they are ahead of that technology in the private backroom information. If this is what they're admitting to working on, then guaranteed in the backrooms that you're not told about, they're working on the next level of technology, at least the next level, if not 2 or 3 or more steps ahead. So. And other companies have over recent years, that other article was referencing biological components, logic gates, etc. But there have been leaps and bounds made in the merging of electronic and biological. They do have chips that transfer an electrical impulse within a biological system, i.e. brain impulses, into digital electronic impulses on a printed circuit board. So in other words, they have the technology. We have the technology. They have the technology to do that kind of brain implant stuff. As I said, the other article is referencing biological tech, biotech. But yes, that article talking about the neuroscience agenda, again, 2045, Project 2045, the virtual singularity, and I call it virtual singularity because it's reliant on this virtual environment, this digital transformation, transhumanist transformation. Add into that all the stuff, like cashless society and yoinking. I like that word, yoink. It's one of those highly descriptive words in the English language because it sounds just like what it's trying to describe. Well, to me it does. Maybe it's just my odd imagination. But anyway, yes, yoinking money straight out of people's bank accounts. But it's all science fiction, when we talk about this kind of stuff. It's all just crazy conspiracy theory. And yes, this is one of the not so much main topics, because I don't want to dwell too long on this, because quite a few other voices out there have ranted about it. I think fair enough, people have been putting this info out there, but I think it's certainly worth passing on. This is the original article as it appeared on Business Insider. I use this link just simply to show reference to propaganda. If you want the actual detail of the poll, because it was a poll, I was going to say research project, but it was a poll. To me it's a research project. But yes, anyway, digressing ahead of myself, explaining myself before I told you what I'm talking about. This was a recent poll that has come out of the Public Policy Polling Company Institute. What are they, an institute or a company? I don't know without checking it. But anyway, yes, this original article, as I mentioned, find it on businessinsider.com. Title of it is "A Ridiculous Number of Americans Believe in Crazy Conspiracy Theories." Now, as I say, I'm using this link to begin it simply because it's just just by the title alone, talk about propaganda. The picture they use on the article is the classic Illuminati style all-seeing eye in the triangle from the dollar bill. And the various little bits. It's only a tiny short article. It's just pointing at this poll study, but yeah, it just straight away starts with the pejorative attitude to place into the mind of the reader, or to steer the mind of the reader towards seeing these things as all just silliness and bunkum and woo-woo science. As another side note, if anybody else has been watching this, I find it very interesting and somewhat enheartening because of the result of this being exposed, following the current situation between Graham Hancock and the TEDx group, or the TED Talks group. I've followed the TED Talks channel on YouTube for the past few years, which includes like the sub-channels TEDx and whatever, the editor's choice or whatever the particular kind of branding they want to box it into. But anyway, yes, you do get some really interesting stuff on there. I think you do, definitely. But at the same time, you also get a lot of stuff that is so stuck in dogma, or is just blatant propaganda for the agenda. It's ridiculous. Some of the stuff I've seen put up on there just makes me want to vomit and throw it on stage. But it has been very, very interesting to watch the debacle ever since Graham Hancock and Rupert Sheldrake did their talks on the TEDx, that were then almost immediately taken down from the TEDx channel, and basically they tried to shuffle them out of sight, out the back door, and not mention them again because they weren't happy with the contents, because it was against the agenda, it was against the dogma. But there has been a very intense blowback from that, because Graham Hancock, being who he is, he doesn't stand down when the academics start doing their usual bullshit, basically, to put it simply. If you looked into the academic world, I think you'll understand the kind of thing I mean. There's most definitely a very dogmatic hierarchy where the heretics are resoundingly attacked at every opportunity. To me, it's not true science. It's one of the reasons why I eventually steered away from the academic world, because it's not true science. It's a set of boxes that they force on your head. They compartmentalise you to the nth degree, which is why you end up with specialists in the dresses worn by Lisa on The Simpsons during episodes that were published during the 90s. It just becomes ridiculous. Anyway, yes. Don't start ranting about academia. But yes, as a side note, if you haven't seen that going on, if you want to go and check that out, it is very interesting to read Graham Hancock's responses and questions to the TED people, the TED Talks people, and to the fact that their dogmatic agenda of trying to hide voices that they don't want in the conversation, because that's what it comes down to. Like I say, it's not true science. They just want to subvert these subjects, these bits of evidence, these arguments and perspectives. They want to make sure they're not in the indoctrination agenda. They want you to only learn, to only know what they want you to know. So, having Sheldrake standing up there and talking about breaking down the dogma of the scientific academia, no, they didn't like that at all. And yes, this poll, if you're interested in these kind of things, this kind of sociological aspects, I think it goes much further than that, because as you can see, if you follow the links from that base article, it gives you the link to the full findings, which will take you eventually, if you want to look at it, the PDF of the full results. I'm not going to go over them because they're there for you to look at if you want. There's various things on there, but as others have mentioned, it is quite interesting, not unexpected, but certainly the same old of them mixing in it's difficult to choose language to meet this, because this is part of the problem. Genuine conspiracies, things that even can be proved in a court of law to have been a conspiracy, where actual names and dates and times and crimes, etc., could be put across a court to get some kind of justice over it. Some of these things are just, but they've mixed it in with some silliness and some craziness, so that it just confuses the whole issue. It takes a really big dump in that punch bowl. But at the same time, there are some statistics in there which do actually, I would hope anyway, make me optimistic. Hopefully they make you optimistic as well. It shows that there are quite a large percentage of people, and remember, this is a poll that was done in the USA. It doesn't, in the immediate details, tell me how many people were actually polled, etc., or the methodology of what they did, whatever. You'd look into that further if you're really that interested, because we can't just look at this as just being pure propaganda if we wanted to. But yeah, it is quite interesting. I mean, 6% of voters believe Osama bin Laden is still alive. So there are so many little bits in this that you could say, yeah, that's from that agenda, that's from that agenda, that's from this, blah, 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 blah. But really, when it comes down to it, it's the same old of attempting to demonise, to categorise anybody that questions the status quo as being abnormal, crazy, woo-woo, Looney Tunes. Don't listen to them, they're talking gibberish and nothing they say makes sense. It's all rubbish, it's not true, honest, I tell you. Classically, like when the liar gets caught out and they have that little tantrum of trying to convince you that they were the one telling the truth. No, it's the other person that's lying. Even though they got chocolate smeared all over their face. It wasn't me that ate the cookies, no, it was him. Yeah. As Anita Hitt would say, But let's continue this on, because this for me was why I thought I'm not going to just let this pass, even though, as I say, lots of other people have talked about this poll. It is just more of the same old, same old. It's the same old crap that they roll out to try and keep the public in line, basically. Stop them asking, don't ask questions, you'll be ostracised by everybody you know. Nobody will talk to you. Nobody will want to buy you a pint. No, because you talk about all this stuff. Yes, we know the way it goes. But then, synchronistically, I mean, I think that the guys at Waking Times might have put this article up deliberately to counteract this poll. But this is an excellent little article. Find it on wakingtimes.com. Just wait for it to open. Waking Times is always a little bit slow on my system. I think it's probably just where their servers are or whatever. Wakingtimes.com. The truth is out there. The role of conspiracy theories in personal transformation. This was actually a little bit like a flashback for me, because I'm pretty sure, I've got to be careful how I say that. I'm pretty sure that I read this many years ago, because I did used to get some of like, it was originally appeared in a magazine called New Dawn, and I used to buy a few different publications like that, because, you know, I was into all that kind of odd information. And back then the internet wasn't as big and powerful as it is now, so yeah, we were still buying print media or consuming print media. But anyway, yeah, this is a really good little article, I think. Another sort of slight side note, but as I do, I like to note these memes as I see them occurring. There's been a recent uprising in interest and talk about the kind of hermetic perceptions, perspective, you know, all those old Gnostic teachings, and this one in particular, as the reason I mention it, quotes the Nag Hammadi text at the beginning. Ignorance brought about anguish and terror, and the anguish grew solid like fog, and no one was able to see. From the Gospel of Truth, Nag Hammadi text. They're a core basis for a lot of the hermetic ideas and concepts, etc. And as I say, there does seem to have been a rising up of interest in that kind of perspective. I've seen people talking about archons. You know, I've mentioned this in, I think I mentioned it in the last broadcast, and I've mentioned it on a couple of my blogs. Yeah, talking about the archons and stuff like that. So there does seem to have been a bit of a interest in that side of things recently. But yeah, if you want some sort of good counterbalance, I feel it is, certainly is, good counterbalance to that kind of propaganda crap of that poll of you're all just crazy conspiracy nuts. Yeah, in a sociological, in a psychosocial sense, this helps raise the awareness of the fact that being aware of conspiracy theories, or theorising on conspiracies, as Anti-Terrorist reminds us, is conspiracy theorist, is actually beneficial to you. In a purely anthropological sense, it's the equivalent of your usual fight or flight responses to the dangers of surviving in this physical world, of hunting and gathering and surviving, not being eaten by the lions and tigers. Oh my! It's the same core structure of the mind that leads to the questionings, because there is, in some manner or another, some kind of perceived problem or possible danger, etc. So begins a questioning process. Now, as I usually do, these things do, as I've shown you all these links, they will link together, probably hopefully I will manage to get across how they link together. So don't worry if it seems like I jump somewhat. Hopefully it will make sense by the end, if I get on with it, because yeah, it's already 1:15. As I usually do, I'm rambling off all over the place. I'm looking for the one bit in that article which I should have highlighted it and left it open, really, shouldn't I? I was trying to reduce the load on my browser so it wasn't lagging in any way. But there's some various little bits in there that I think help define it, of that seeking out of questions, or the questioning in the first place, leads you to discovering the fact that there are conspiracies. Undeniably there are conspiracies, if you are honest and use the word conspiracy in the way it is meant to be used, not as a dismissive pejorative to just try and make somebody shut up because they're talking about a subject that frightens you for one reason or another, or that you feel is not of value to your matrix world, because you still have all your lovely matrix cake, so you don't care about the fact that other people have to die in other countries for you to have that cake. No, so yeah, if you use the word honestly, then it is undeniable that there are conspiracies. Constantly, all the time, there are conspiracies. They may not necessarily be on, massive scale like we often like to talk about, like the New World Order and all that kind of stuff. But again, caveat myself as I usually do. My conclusions, I got to the conclusions or the realisations eventually that it's pretty undeniable that there is that pyramidal structure, which means undeniably there are a handful of people at the top, because you can't have all of us at the top, not according to their system. This is thinking from their point of view. You can't have us all at the top. There wouldn't be enough room for everyone. There wouldn't be enough cake for everyone. So obviously there has to be only a handful of people at the top. So it's not crazy woo-woo-ness, it's just being honest, it's just common sense, it's just reality. I'm looking for that one bit where he talks about the Hanged Man, the tarot card of the Hanged Man. I can't find it, and I'm not going to sit here wasting your time while I read all the way through the article again. Sorry, read it for yourself. As I say, I think it is a good counterbalance to that kind of usual bullshit demonising propaganda to try and divert you from the path of looking for what is the truth and who is to blame if something is going wrong. Anyway, yes. Jumping. Rhode Island decriminalises marijuana. Hooray, there's another one. And note, they decriminalise it. Hooray! I know all the arguments, read all the arguments before. I shouldn't say I've read all of them. There's bound to be some out there that I haven't. But I have read a lot of the arguments of how it should be legalised because then it helps fuel the economy, blah, blah. That'd be great if we really genuinely had a totally free, grassroots, diversified economy. But we don't. We have a crony capitalist pyramid hierarchy looting economy. We have a cancerous capitalist system. So if you legalise it, you are just giving them even more weapons to use against you. Decriminalise it, totally free it, remove it completely from any kind of legal framework, 'cause it doesn't belong there. It is a beneficial plant that gives us so many benefits. It is just absolute insanity. To me, it is one of the easy examples to show how the system we live within is actually classifiable as insane, because it does things like this. Not only does it make such a plant illegal and demonises and castigates the people who want to use it or make use of it, it also then tries to create a synthetic version of it and sell that to you instead. It's what? So you're telling me the natural version is wrong and not allowed, but this chemical concoction that you've made that you tell me is exactly the same is allowed? That's just completely insane. Don't eat the real cake, eat the matrix cake. It's so much tastier. No, it isn't. Yes, anyway. I'm going to give a link to the people in the chat room if they haven't seen this, so I can't exactly show you this because it's a video. I can't show you this over the airwaves. I could play the audio off it, but then you'd miss a lot of the point. This was from Deke Jackson, the fucking news, or FKN News if you want the polite etiquette version of how to say these things. On the fucking news channel on YouTube, he put up a little video called "How Drugs Save the Economy." It's a good one of his rants about a lot of these hypocrisies to do with the prohibition of drugs and how much money is wasted on the drug war and all the rest of it that's intertwined. As I say, I can't exactly relate it to you across the airwaves. You've got to go and watch it, because he's included a lot of info in the pictures, in the details of the text that are featured in the video. So yes, worth a watch, definitely. Another one of those good little bits of positive propaganda. And partly leaping, but this is where I'm going to start hopefully stitching this somewhat together. This article, I saw this on other sites as well, so it's already going somewhat viral, and I think it's very well deserved. It is an excellent article, but unfortunately it is quite long, so certainly not expecting anyone to sit and scan read through that now, not unless you're, extremely competent at that kind of thing. But anyway, yeah, before I start rambling off again, this was on John Rappaport's blog. You can find it on johnrappaport.wordpress.com. Title of it is "Chemical Warfare Against the Nation Right Under Our Noses." Now, this is, from his point of view, it's primarily talking about the USA, the American continent, South America as well a little bit, but really concentrating on them. But to me, this is, you could reference this to all the westernized nations, certainly, if not most of the globe. What he's talking about in this is, true for certainly us here in the UK, and for most of us, as I say, in the westernized nations, in the allied nations. But he's basically talking about, referencing the whole ridiculousness of the drug war, the prohibition, the drug war, and the hypocrisy of Big Pharma, and how the Big Pharma chemicals can be and are, if not just as bad, worse than a lot of the prohibited drugs, the illegal drugs, etc., etc., and how the populace, the citizenry, are being poisoned with these kind of things. As I say, it's a long article. I certainly think it's worth you reading if you've got the time to do so. But yeah, it is quite a long one. You'll have to go and spend a few minutes reading that if you want to. But I feel certainly adds into this topic as I'm going along. Part of the flow to taking this information of what's been coming out recently. This is not necessarily people pointing out new things or new revelations and new evidence or whatever, but as I've talked about recently, to me, having been looking at this kind of stuff a decade or more ago, it's very encouraging to see the level of interest and competency, enthusiasm, passion, creativity that now is coalescing more and more in these little, yes, they might be subdivided into little different social media groups and things like that, but they are intertwining themselves all together. And as I say, that one article from John Rappaport's blog, I've already seen it go across at least 3 other websites, the big aggregating sites such as Activist Post, etc. So this kind of information, these kind of snippets of perspective or reasoned argument or evidence, people putting together more and more good documented evidence of how the structure of this system has been put in place and how it is growing, etc. Yeah, lots of good stuff is rising up out there, is coming together. Mentioning Activist Post, this is a little bit of a jump again, but as I say, I'll keep going with the flow. This was one of the first mentions I saw of it on Activist Post. As I had a bit of time off. I sort of caught up in the last week or so to the information that's been going on over the last week. So this is one that is several days old, I think now, waiting for it to open. March 30th, 2013, activistpost.com, depositor haircuts, the new normal. That's the title of the article. Yes, again, it is a bit of a long article for for the people suffering with their 15-minute attention span. It's not that long actually, really, but there you go. I know people have difficulty with reading. Don't want to read, I just want somebody to tell me. This is all relating to the situation as it has been playing out in Cyprus. But as I will go through various, like I said, I've got quite a few links, got a few more to go yet. And as I go through them, you'll see how this grows. As I've been ranting about, I think I might have mentioned it on the last broadcast, and now I did on the one vlog. Now that this method has been sanctioned, proved and sanctioned and done, because people in Cyprus are now looking at their accounts and seeing that there's big chunks of money missing, it will be used as a standard of practice for everybody else. It's intertwined into this big paper pyramid Ponzi scheme. So really, I've been saying this to so many people recently, certainly, all my immediate family and friends, etc. Every chance I get when I speak to somebody I haven't spoken to for a few weeks or months or whatever, one of the first things I say to them is, make sure you don't have any money in the bank that you're not happy to lose. Just keep in the bank what you really essentially need in the bank to cover your bills that have to be paid by a bank or whatever. If it's possible for you, get your money out of the bank. Don't leave it in there. Just don't. Already other countries have mentioned that they are looking at how this was done, and I think they've near enough said it in these words, taking it as a model. So therefore, as the European Union is so intertwined into all this stuff, the whole global economic system is so intertwined in many ways, maybe not completely dependent on it, but it would certainly cause a very catastrophic crash of the entire global financial system. Other countries have already been beavering away over the last few years to try and hedge their bets against this coming inevitable crash. But yes, this particular method of stand or deliver, we will take what we like out of your bank account, is being seen as the new way forward for all these failing bank structures, financial structures. As it says in the chat room, it's not a haircut, it's a fucking skinhead. This is not a haircut, it is a shaving of the head. They are shaving your savings. Say that when you're not drunk. Shaving your savings. This is another article from the Activist Post that just carries it on, from the same author, I believe. Wait for it to load. Yes, it is same author. This more recent, next day, March 31st, depositor haircut spreading. And this is where he lists a bit of detail about how, as I've just said, this methodology is now being looked at by other countries, and other countries are considering using it. If they publicly state they're considering using it, that means they're going to use it. In my opinion, my perspective, my conclusions based on repetition of similar actions, maybe not exactly the same, but certainly very similar in the past, of when they've alluded to, they're thinking about, they might try it out, they're considering using this, blah blah blah. Lo and behold, within a few months, 6 months, whatever, they've done it. So, are they giving you fair warning that this is headed your way? could you call it fair warning? That implies some kind of, moral empathy, and I don't think these people have any whatsoever. This, just to sort of further the flow, those two articles that I've just mentioned just sort of set the scene, as it were, of this is what the banks are doing, this is what's happening. And obviously you can find other articles about this, news articles and news videos and whatever. There's loads on this topic at the moment, obviously. I'm just trying to stitch together some of the many that I've seen that make sense to me in relation to this thread as we go along. This is on End the Lie. End the Lie website always takes a while to open for me as well. Come on, load faster. endthelie.com. Cyprus's president-related company transfers 21 million euros to London prior to bailout agreement report. That's the full title of the article, rather long-winded title, but there you go. To simplify it, in other words, the president of Cyprus, he has his fingers in the pie of a company, and strangely, coincidentally enough, he happened to transfer 21 million euros, the holdings of that company, out of the Cypriot banks days before the bailout agreement was put through. So, did he know something beforehand? Did he? Was he given a nod? Was he friends with somebody who told him, we're going to do this, better shift your money, mate, otherwise we'll be nicking yours as well? Does that make him a criminal? Does it? Will they, just change the rules to suit their need? Will they just ignore you? Will they? Do you need more factual proof about these things before you can breach that denial barrier to see them for the criminals that they are? That's a interesting article in the sense of it explaining that situation of him doing that convenient money shuffling. But other than that, that's about it really. Next article just furthers that information along in terms of the bunch of criminals. This one, I picked this one just from Zero Hedge because I thought he'd put the bits together at the video and whatever, because I've seen this article on other websites as well. But this is the one from zerohedge.com. List released with 132 names who pulled Cyprus deposits ahead of confiscation day. So this is just further pointing at criminals who can be shown to have probably, I do have to allow the potentiality that this was just pure random fluke chance that they took their money out before this happened. Yes, strokey beard. Pure fluke chance, wasn't it, that they took their money out before this happened? But yes, more factual evidence that they are a bunch of criminals who will change the rules to suit themselves, who will just engage in what would, for the rest of us, be considered illegal activity. What the rest of us would be put in jail for. No, they just carry on regardless. A big long list there, and it ranges from companies, corporations, through to individuals as well. And this little snippet as well I plucked just simply to add further to that thread, to try and reinforce this home to people. I know I constantly sort of say this kind of thing, and I know that for some people it puts them off, but your government, those people that rule you, people like Camel Face and ridiculous puppet Johnson, they don't give a crap about you. They don't care if you end up on the street starving to death. They couldn't care less. They'll be glad to be rid of you. You're another useless eater that they could do without because you are sapping the wealth that they want in their pockets. This one's from the Huffington Post, and please don't, think this is only to do with America. It certainly is not, because it's to do with the LIBOR scandal, but this, plucking the particular story just happens to be on the Huffington Post. HuffingtonPost.com. Judge dismisses most claims in LIBOR lawsuits, ruling in favour of big banks. Not exactly major in-depth article, just says what it says in the title, really. Originally from Reuters, but this one I just happened to see at Huffington Post. The judge who is dealing with the banks, certainly in America, such as JP Morgan Chase and Co., etc., and the case to do with their involvement in the LIBOR scandal, the manipulation of the bank rate, the London interbank rate. She's basically just given them a free pass. They're unlikely to really get done in any what you could consider justice fashion now. They might now just get a bit of a slap on the wrist. Again, it'll be another one of those cost-adjusted fines. They'll get fined a small amount and they'll just pass that fine on to the costs that are forced on their customers at the base of the pyramid. So in other words, you're paying for it again. As I say, please don't think this is just about America. Yes, this particular case is going on in America at the moment and references in those American banks, but the LIBOR is international, links back into the Bank of England, etc., etc. How much you want to dig into that big rabbit hole? Who do these banks belong to? How do they create money? What is the bit of paper in your wallet that they tell you is money? Is it a bit of paper with some ink on it, or does it actually have any kind of value? Have you been conned into a giant Ponzi scheme? Are they now even stealing the bits of paper off you? They are. Yes, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And almost the last one on this topic. Like I said, I had quite a few links this week because I've had a few days worth of stuff to catch up with, so it's given me the opportunity to pluck a few more than usual. This is on another blog called the Web of Debt blog. I found this linked via, I think it might have been whatreallyhappened.com, might be Vera. The Web of Debt.wordpress.com. Web of Debt, sorry, not the, just webofdebt.wordpress.com. Title of the article is "It Can Happen Here, the confiscation scheme planned for US and UK depositors." Now, this is another one, a bit of a long one again, but there's a fair bit of detail in there, lots of links in there, so if you are interested in this topic, good jumping off point for you to look into it further if you wish to. But this is just yet again to hammer home this point I feel needs to be hammered home. I know I'm preaching to the choir to all you lot in the chat room and possibly to most of the people who listen to this, but they've proved it once and they've proved that they can get away with it because the public in Cyprus didn't take the kind of Icelandic route. They didn't come out onto the streets in enough numbers in peaceful non-compliance of demanding a change, demanding that these criminals be arrested, and then having the situation resolved in the same kind of way of Iceland did. They didn't have enough people willing to do that to be able to carry it through. And if you watch, you look at the videos of the protests that went on and etc. I'm not trying to say that the people who were there didn't put in enough effort. They certainly did, but there just weren't enough of them to really carry that home in the way it needed to be, in the same way as they did in Iceland. So, Can it happen here? Yes, of course it can, because it's the same kind of financial system. Just because we have the Bank of England, it's still the same central banking, internationally interwoven system. So it can happen here. Will it happen here? As I say, they've already started using the usual kind of subtle double-speak statements to imply that they're more than likely going to do it, because they're talking about considering it and stuff like that. That's political speak for, we're going to do this to you, and if you don't protest enough, we're going to do this to you. Because that's usually the way it works, in the same kind of way as like the legal rebuttals. They're waiting for somebody to tell them to not do it. If you don't say no, they'll just carry on regardless. If you say, can I have a cookie out of the cookie jar, and nobody tells you no, you'll carry on regardless, won't you? And that's exactly what they're doing. Those dirty pigs down in the pig mine, snuffling away in that trough of your hard-earned money, are saying, oh yeah, let's have some more. Shall we have some more, shall we? Nobody's saying no, so we're going to have some more. It's like I say, just to try and drive home this point, because I think, one of my main concerns is always, or has been for a very long time, I shouldn't say always, been trying to address how these things affect people in a practical way. What actual difference does it make in your day-to-day life? How will it actually affect you, the general public, which we all are usually in general? How does it actually affect your day-to-day living, etc., and what can you do about that, and how do you do something about that? So to me, trying to drive home this point is the fact that I can see this happening here soon enough. As I said earlier, when I was whining about my own financial situation, I ain't got anything for them to take. I've got a whole lot of nothing, and they're welcome to bucketfuls of it if they want it. But, for me, I'm looking at members of my family and my friends and everybody else, because, it's to me where I'm looking, everybody else, not just me, myself, I, me. They're actually going to put a lot of people into deprivation. They're going to take the boundary of the poverty level and expand it immensely. It's already happening now here in the UK. Now that it's gone past that 1st of April date, the beginning of the new financial year, we've got this bedroom tax coming in. All this stuff is going to cause a lot of hardship and a lot of misery and suffering, and they will just carry on regardless if you don't say no. And this now sort of nicely leads me to what I wanted to get to. I had got some other music I was going to play, but because I've spent so much time, I might shuffle that round a bit, because I've got only a few more links to put in, but this was the main thing that I wanted to say, really, in relation to all these links. There's been a fair bit of talk recently, as I often do. I like to watch what are the topics of conversation, what garners the interest of people in those topics, which topics carry on the longest and gather the much weight, the most interest, what are the memes, etc., etc. But it's not just to look at it in that mimetic fashion. It's just the general social observation of what are people chattering about, what is the current mindset of the global consciousness. And in that respect, there has been more talk recently of, do protests make any difference? It's the same old argument again. Does protesting make any difference? Because we're all going out on the streets and waving our placards, and look what happened in Cyprus, they protested and look what happened. Yes, I agree with that kind of perspective, because, as I've tried to say to people, if you go to a protest expecting your protest to cause the machine to change what it's doing, it most likely won't. So you're probably going to end up feeling disappointed, like you didn't achieve anything. Because for me, I sort of came to that conclusion, realisation, awareness, whatever you want to call it, when I went to the anti-Iraq war protest in 2003, wasn't it, I think, and seeing how many hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people had gathered in London for that. I went to the one in London, and this was a global thing. There was millions of people across the world all protesting the same point. And did it stop them? No, it didn't. So yes, I can fully understand people saying protest doesn't work, but I would argue that, yeah, it doesn't work if you approach it with that attitude of expecting it to cause the politicians or whoever to change what they're doing. It most likely won't. But you shouldn't give a shit about influencing them, because by trying to influence them, you're still playing the game of the machine. You're running up to Master and saying, please Master, stop whipping me. Do you really think your master is going to stop whipping you if he doesn't want to stop whipping you? No, he's going to carry on. If anything, he's probably going to enjoy it more. Let them protest all they want as long as they keep paying their taxes. Again, my memory fails me as to who that quote is from. I should make more effort to memorise these things properly, but the information is readily there, so if you want to check it out. But along those lines, talking about does protest work or doesn't it, as I say, if you look at it from the point of view of expecting or demanding Master to stop what he's doing, then protest isn't really a very effective way of doing it. But I would also argue from another perspective that I go to protest not under the illusion that by waving my placard I'm going to make the machine change what it's doing. I go there to wave my placard at everybody else who happens to be looking. Because protest is about connecting with people, it's about spreading awareness, it's about raising awareness on whatever particular subject the protest is for, etc. It's about changing people's minds or waking them up, making them a bit more aware, showing them or pointing out stuff that they may not be aware of, because the mainstream doesn't tell them, doesn't like them to talk about it, doesn't want to admit the evidence, doesn't want to show you the evidence. So you have to actually go out with a placard with a picture of a DU mutated baby from Iraq to actually prove to people that this stuff is going on in the world. Because the mainstream media won't show you those pictures. And yes, it is a horrible thing to do, to confront somebody with that kind of horrific reality, but sometimes people need a reality check, because otherwise they get lost in delusion and fantasy and end up talking about alien reptiles living in the Buckingham Palace and stuff like that. And yes, there we go into the pejorative, dismissive conspiracy theory labels. But hopefully you get the point. Protest is about meeting up with others and sharing and hopefully raising awareness, changing hearts and minds. I know it sounds cliche, but that's what it's about. That's why, to me, protest does not necessarily have to be 1 million people on the streets of a big city. A protest can be one person with a megaphone or a placard or a bunch of pictures pasted onto a board hung up on the side of some railings. That's a protest still. Art as protest, which I will come back to, but before I digress even further, because time is rapidly ticking by, there's a link to the UK Uncut website if you are interested, if you want to go along that line of joining in with protests and adding your energy into those protests and those actions. And for us here in the UK, that is a website I would recommend, UK Uncut. I think they're one of the groups that has managed to fairly successfully skirt the agendas and the propagandizing, the co-opting of these kind of groups. You know, as always, the machine will attempt to co-opt and divert these kind of groups. They always do, they always will. Some it will happen to quite badly, some manage to survive it and actually become something useful after that attack. But anyway, digressing. If you are interested, that link, which is on ukuncut.org.uk, you'll find a page on there which will take you to their list of actions that are going on across the UK, or you can set up your own if you want to start one in your town, your village, your area, wherever. But if you want to get involved, as I've ranted so much about in recent times, intent and action, you have to participate. I'm still yet to meet the ascended master who can sit on his backside and wish cake into being in front of himself so that he never has to go up and get something to eat or go to the toilet to take a dump. I've yet to meet that person, I'm sorry. So as far as I'm concerned, that reaffirms for me that your existence in this 3D reality requires you to take a bit of physical interactivity with it. You have to be involved with it. And I'm not trying to, suggest that people have to go out and get involved in protests. This is just there if you want to, if you're interested, if you feel inclined to that kind of thing, like taking those kind of actions, go for it, get involved. Now, plenty of ways that you can get involved nowadays in this contemporary age of the mass media interconnectivity of us all, and that is, not ignoring the fact that there are some old school, low-tech, personal interactive ways that you can get involved with stuff as well. Getting involved in your local community, even getting involved with, like I said, was reaffirmed for me recently, your immediate family, your extended family, your tribal grouping. But it requires you getting involved. Stop observing, start participating. Even in the smallest way. I don't like this new attitude of denigration. I think it's another one of those disempowerment memes where you'll often see the comments of like, oh, so you shared a link, did you? So that makes you feel like you've fixed the world now, does it? That kind of denigratory statement is just one of those little imps, those subtle niggle imps that is to me is just a very negative way of trying to address something just because you don't like it or it makes you uncomfortable or whatever. You want the person to shut up. You just want them to stop talking about those topics. Now, I did have a little bit more of blurb I was going to ramble about, but I'll start winding it up now, I promise, because we're almost at the end and I want to play at least a couple of tracks out for you. But don't fall for the disempowerment kind of idea of it. Is protest useless? Expecting the system to change just because you shout at it, it could be argued that that's pretty useless. That's like shouting into a hurricane, etc, etc. No, readdress your perspective and what you're doing with your energy there in the first place. It's by that interactivity with everybody else. It's just normal human interactivity. That's what's going to grow the difference, grow the change. Shouting at Camelface, telling him that he's a criminal and he shouldn't be doing these things, he's not going to change what he's doing. He's not going to change what he's doing until somebody puts him in handcuffs and takes him away to a cage somewhere. The other thing I was going to waffle about, I've seen this as well. This is partly inspired by some of the backs and forwards as I've seen these synchronicities that I've talked about a lot recently. It's mainly to do with a good portion of the talking heads, the channels that I follow and articles that I read and whatever, seem to be, to me, saying the kind of stuff that I've been talking about a lot recently in the past few months. And it did seem somewhat beyond any kind of fluke coincidence. Are there any coincidences? which made me say, you know, what's going on here? Is this just really amazing synchronicity, or are these people just rewording something I've just said? And then, of course, you have the problems of when you're talking about generalities, anybody can talk about a generality. Oftentimes, as well, just because one person is talking about a subject doesn't mean they have any kind of connection to somebody else, somewhere else on the planet who happens to also be talking about the same subject. This can happen. Innovation doesn't necessarily have to be unique. There's plenty of cases in science of where similar things have been invented or developed at roughly the same time with no interaction between the two scientists, etc., etc. You get the point. But part of what I'd been hearing along that thread of synchronicities was people talking about how everybody is stuck. They're not moving forward. They're stuck in their resistance. They're stuck in their dogmatic mindsets. They're stuck in their own little tribes, and they're stuck in their ego, and they won't come and join us, which to me is just ridiculous hypocrisy. It's illogical hypocrisy. It would be like me saying to you that you're not good enough because you're not coming to sit in my living room and sit next to me and be part of my club now. You have to be part of my club now, otherwise you're obviously not taking part. That is just ridiculous guilt tripping of such a... yeah, whatever. If these people are attempting to use these kind of psychological manipulations, then I wonder where they're getting this drive from, and it does make me question some of the things they're saying. But at the same time, and certainly within the last week of me catching up on the stuff that I'd missed in the previous week, it seems more that this is about a self-realisation for these people themselves. The whole OPPT thing, are you opted into being and doing, and lo and behold, after the initial joyous shout of this thing starting, and everybody was like, oh yes, it's begun, let's all get on, yeah, let's get on board, get in line, way, here we go on the train, way. And now a lot of them are backpedaling and rewording what they've said before, or trying to clarify it so that it now fits what people are questioning. All this stuff going on. Recently I posted a little blurb to my channel, just a little bit of wordage which came to me. I think I mentioned it in a previous show. It's just a little bit of word art, a circular piece of word art, I'd call it that. I'll just read it out, it's easier rather than trying to explain that anyway. My life is my art is my protest is my resistance is my crucible is my realisation is my life is my art. And for me, I had no problem with using those particular words. If anything, those particular words to me made sense within what I was trying to get across, portray in the meaning of that sentence, structure. But, as I say, heard so many voices recently putting across this kind of attitude of, you're stuck in your resistance, you're just resisting for the sake of resisting. And to me, it's like you're missing the point here by automatically assuming that the word resistance implies some kind of violent or aggressive opposition. It doesn't at all. To me, it certainly doesn't. Not in a philosophical, spiritual sense. It certainly does not. A core of thought process. It certainly does not imply that. It just implies sentience. To me, it implies... I'll explain if I can, if this will make sense here. If you were existing truly in the now, in the total moment of the now, you would not be impinged upon by any other potentiality of past or future, because you're existing in the now. Because of that, being in the now, you have no need to oppose or question or resist anything that's going on, because you're part and parcel of it, because it's all taking place within the now. As soon as you start questioning in any way, and that questioning goes so deep to the core of sentience, of literally, like Descartes' classic quote, "I think, therefore I am," and that can be interpreted in so many ways. For me personally, I could boil it down to the mere statement of I. You don't even need anything else. You just need the word I, as in the identification that, yes, I am thinking, yes, I am a sentience that is aware of itself. That is the act of resistance, because you are opposing the status quo of the total absorption within the moment of the now. So in this human experience, in this experience we have of being mankind on this planet, in this biosphere, in this universe, in this 3D reality, in this existence, we are part of a linear three-dimensional structure. As I said earlier, I find that pretty undeniable. It's not to deny that there are other dimensions, but this currently is a three-dimensional, four-dimensional experience. So that implies linear. It would be illogical to say it doesn't, because we experience moment after moment after moment, and we can remember prior moments, we can predict future moments. So even if there is an illusion of time, we actually create time by the way we act within this moment of now. And that in itself is an act of resistance, because you are opposing the status quo of that eternal now. So, again, for me, I just wanted to point this out because I felt that people could quite easily get stuck into that misconception of what resistance means. We all want to progress to a better world. We all want these crimes to be addressed and the suffering to be resolved, and for, you know, all the good stuff that we all often talk about. That is an act of linear progression that requires you to resist the status quo of the criminal events that are being subjected upon us. So merely by having a joyful conversation about the optimistic possibilities of the future, if we work together on the good potentialities, that's resisting. Doesn't require me to stand outside a parliamentary building waving a big banner and being all angry and mad. That's just another aspect of resistance. I've seen this talked about before from a philosophical argument point of view of, you know, existence is resistance, and I would agree with that, but only with the caveat that you please spend a bit of time comprehending what those words represent to you. What are the definitions of them in the standard kind of dictionary sense, but also what are the meanings that they hold for you, because that's part and parcel of your personal experience, your subjective relative viewpoint, and that's what you're looking at your experience from. Yes, anyway, I've gone past the hour even. I apologise. As I said, I had at least a week's worth of rambling to get out at you. I'm going to quickly throw a couple more links in the chat room for those people that were there. I will read the titles out in a moment, but I'll quickly wind it up because we've gone past the hour, and you're doing really well listening this far, thank you. This was one on zengardener.com. You know, I often refer to his articles. I like the way he writes, I like the way he presents things. zengardener.com, The Manufactured Singularity, Human Obsolescence. Bit of a long article. It might seem a bit doom and gloom when you're first going through the first bits, but if you're interested, please read all of it and get down to the bottom bit where he uplifts it a little bit. But yes, it's just more of a review, let's put it that way, on some of the big core agendas of what is going on across the planet, and that transhumanist manipulation, etc., the unreal. But to further that, and to give you another optimistic uplift, This was only little short article, little snippet, but I thought it said really well, worded well, in that uplift fashion. This is from the Waking Times again, wakingtimes.com. Title of the article is simply Trust and Connect. Like I said, it's only a little short article, but I think it's worth you looking at. It might have been this article that had mention of the tarot card of the Hanging Man in it. Yes, I read quite a few stories, read quite a lot recently, so without having noted it, I did lose track of where I saw that. And if you read these articles that are presented to you, you might get the point of why I mentioned the Hanged Man on the tarot card, and why flipping the pyramid, reversing those energies, reversing the polarity, all these kind of dualistic energetic analogies, etc., that I've often referred to. Maybe this is what we're witnessing. That is what the Hanged Man represents in the tarot deck. I personally prefer to always refer to the Fool card, because I think that represents the self quite aptly. Anyway, yes, I have rambled a lot at you this evening. Thank you very much for listening. If you have got this far, well done, you get a gold star. And yes, I've given you loads of links this week to make up for the gap in time, and I will pick out yes, we'll just play that one. I won't play that because take it too long. I'm only going to play like 5 minutes worth of music at the end. A track from MIDI Intellect. He's doing some great stuff recently. Go and check him out. Find him on Bandcamp, on his own website, MIDI Intellect. Just search him on the web. You'll find him easy enough. Definitely. He's put some free tracks out there you can download for free. All good stuff. And I'll play the usual Bob Marley track to wind it out. So yes, thank you folks. Keep discussing, keep conversing. I'm going to change saying, I'm not going to say keep debating anymore, because people always seem to want to have an aggressive argument. We need to encourage a more compassionate conversation, let's put it that way. Yes, losing my voice now, so I will shut up. Thank you. Keep conversing and keep evolving, keep looking, keep moving on your path. Don't let them drag you down. I will rant at you again next week, folks. Take care.